We're going to try to finish up this ridiculously grotesque strategy session. Yesterday, I did the Sammy's Town Hall with Jarrett Walker, and I actually watched the whole presentation. I don't listening to Jarrett Walker is no problem for me. I can listen to him because he's smart. He knows what he's talking about, and I don't believe he's lying about anything that he's saying. I think he actually believes it, and he's probably right about some of it. I've already told you what I feel about all these changes, but I'm not in charge. I'm just an observer. Let's see if we can get through this nonsense.
I may, slanted is a very derogatory term. That historically has been used against Asians.
Oh God! Oh my God! Okay, when we ended the last meeting, somebody made an accusation that this presentation is slanted because it is slanted. It never occurred to me that was an Asian. I never even thought of it once. Never occurred to me at all. And she's taking offense at the word slanted. I don't know, Kathy. I didn't think of Asian at all when I heard the word. Okay, never occurred to me. I don't know. I'll have to ask my friend Steve about this.
We've been called slants.
Okay.
Yes, that's true. Okay, that's true. That's true, but I think the context is important. It was accused that it was a slanted report, and hey Siri, what's the definition of slanted? Let's see what she says.
Slanted means sloping or leaning in a particular direction. Do you want to hear the next one?
Yes. Well, it says presented or viewed from a particular angle, especially in a biased or unfair way. So that's the meaning I heard. The report was biased and from a point of view, and it never occurred to me at all that it was anti-Asian. It didn't. I think it's a little bit over the top here, Kathy. Okay, the context is everything.
I'm sorry, that isn't, that was not my intent.
Of course it wasn't her intent. She never thought about it either. I didn't see it. I don't blame Simmons for this at all.
What we heard today was the reality of this agency, that for the last 10 years, we have not considered charging any more for the service, and yet we've continued to expand service. Our community continues.
She just lied to our face. We continue to expand service. That's a bold-faced lie. Bold-faced lie. Right here. You're like not providing any service.
Used to ask for us to do more.
You're not doing more. You're doing less.
We have an aging infrastructure, which I talked to the board about last November, where a former general manager indicated to me when I came on the board that his greatest concern was he may have supported building out the system that the agency couldn't support.
That's correct. Who said that? Was that Kelsey? I've been saying that for years. I've been saying that for a decade. Stop expanding your fucking service, you idiots. This is why you're in this position.
A lot of what
that's got nothing to do with what's going on, but I mean, they kept expanding their light rail systems. They had a world-class bus service, which was destroyed for the light rail, and the ridership has been going down ever since they instituted the light rail and the COVID scamdemic. I want to make sure it's the COVID scamdemic was the last nail in that coffin.
What we're dealing with right now is in terms of a system that it costs a lot to provide the service to everyone. And it's not that I think exploring alternate sources of funding isn't important. We're at a point right now as an agency where we're really almost up against the wall.
That's bullshit lie. What a liar. Okay, she's lying to us. She's trying to put forth the case that if they don't raise fares, somehow there's going to be a disaster. That's another bold-faced lie, folks. Another bold-faced lie. That's two now.
I mean, if we don't find if we don't increase fare, and if we don't find other sources of funding, our alternatives are to cut bring the system, make it smaller. I think we're at a point today where we need to make a decision about increasing fare at in the next budget cycle, and for staff to come back with a proposal and a rationale that we can all consider as a full board of seven individuals. And,
this is really a lie, and I think most people understand that. And I want to point out that the so-called labor shortage isn't real. It's a pay shortage. And for the last 2 years, and I calculated this out, the fact that they didn't have enough operators saved them $60 million. Okay, they saved $60 million on labor costs. They got that federal bailout. They didn't spend it on keeping the service going, which is what it was for. And just from not having enough operators, that's $60 million. So what did they do with all this money is my $100 question, $100 million. I'm not going to ask a public records request for this. It's not my job to be their ombudsman. But I wish somebody would. Where did you spend that federal money, the COVID bailout, the so-called Quick CARES Act? God.
It's my job to enlighten the full board on the financial realities of this agency, which, as I said in my opening remarks,
it's garbage. We know it's not true, Simmons. We know you're just doing what you were told by Sam the man, Sam the fake man, who pretends to be like, I'm all for the riders and I'm all for the drivers.
I had no knowledge of, we get pieces of information, ridership information, we get budget information.
Think about it for a minute, folks. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, the fare's $250. What are they going to do? Make it $275? How much money is that in reality? It's nothing. Okay, it's nothing. It's 25 cents more. I mean, I don't know how much arrogance they have, how far they think they can push it, but it's nothing. It doesn't come out to anything. All right, it's just adding a 15 cents, 25 cents on top of it is going to be a couple $1 million, which is less than one little pork barrel extension.
But I'd never seen it all put together, and I hadn't seen it in relationship to other agencies, and I knew other agencies had other funding sources from us, but I didn't know to what degree. And so what are the next steps, Director Way, that you raised the question, and it's directly where we're going, is that does this board want to direct staff to come back to us with a fair proposal at a
And of course, this is the worst thing possible for the population. So they're going to increase your fare. They're going to implement tolls. The 2030 reset is happening. They're going to squeeze the life out of us. Rampant inflation. This is absurd, man. You're watching these people following an agenda that's coming from a centralized authority. This is not even coming from them. I don't blame Sam for this, because I know this isn't even coming from him. I know this is coming from above him. And he's a career technocrat. Career technocrats follow orders. How do you think the Jews got to the concentration camp? The technocracy of Germany at the time followed their orders.
Subsequent strategy session, that would be November 9th. It's on our calendars right now. This would impact the FY24 budget. So, it doesn't take a unanimous vote by all of us, but it does, I think, show our fiduciary responsibility as board members to what it takes to keep this agency moving forward. and providing not just current service, but expanded service. So that's the point, is do we have enough information to see the stark reality of our situation today? So that's where I leave it. Director Gonzalez?
Thank you, I did it backwards. Thank you, President Simmons. I really appreciate you positioning us into the next steps for what it's worth. And I would imagine it's best for the agency if we're all coming with a clear directive as a group. And so I'd like to propose what I consider to be the directive. At the very least, I can share what I'm looking for. So I would consider hearing from the agency on what you recommend to improve fare box recovery. I think that's the issue to solve. And as I mentioned, fares, evasion, and ridership are the three legs of that stool. I'd love to see a proposal for how you think we're going to be improving fare box recovery. And I'll acknowledge, as Director Bauman well stated, fares as an instrument alone could be a very inconvenient first step when we put them in light with evasion and with the need to increase ridership. It could send the wrong message to the public that we are penalizing the compliers and the folks that are riding currently to sort of overcome the burden of too many empty seats. Those are the things that I think are how we are likely to be received, and I would have a hard time supporting any sort of recommendation that's only using that one lever of fares as how we're going to recuperate fare box recovery rates. So I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration because I think that we do have a real issue here. I just don't think we only have one tool at our disposal to pull it off.
That was good, Ozzy. You said something without saying anything.
I guess I'll just say. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Okay. And I also see Director Edwards online. Do you want to go first, Keith? I saw your hand up before me, so I just wanted.
Yes, thank you. I think that Director Gonzalez is correct, but I guess what I would like to see is that within our concerns and issues and our thoughts to President Simmons, each one of us. And we sit through that and we come up with something that we can give to staff. This doesn't go on and on and on. I think, I appreciate Director Gonzalez with his resolution, but I think that even with that, we would get something back in November that we have this in back with staff again and then ask them to remaker it. And I think that it's better to me, if I'm staff, I want to know all the parameters up front before I go and start examining the options that I'm going to bring back to you. I think that's what we need. I think that it's going to be a little bit of a longer route. It's not going to be November 9th. But at the same time, I think that it gets there without continuing to use staff inefficiently. I think that's what we do is we continue to send stuff back to them and say, oh, well, what we calculated this is not considered, we want to consider this as well. We're going to be in the next April still doing this and not come back with a solution.
Director Way and then Director Bauman.
Thank you. I would like to ask staff, if we take no action on a fare increase for next year, what happens? So
Good question, Kathy.
that may be stated.
Good question.
There might be a doomsday scenario.
A doomsday scenario. You don't really believe that, right? I mean, just calculate it out, okay? Okay, I'll calculate it out for you right now. Okay, let me get out my calculator. Okay, say they have full fares, which is, I think it's $200 million. Okay, so first of all, we have to figure out what would be 25 cents, 0.25 divided by $2.50? Okay, so that's 1% more. Okay, so we can figure that out easily. So what's 1% of 200 million? 2 million. So they're talking about $2 million here. They're not talking about 200 million. They're talking about 2 million.
I don't know, but I just would like
Right here.
a clear rationale explanation. If we take no action on a fare increase for next year, what's going to happen? Secondly, I don't know how the service plan changes the adding of the frequent lines for some of the, the equity audiences that our consultant last week talked about. I don't know how all of that plays into this. Quite frankly, I'm a little confused in terms of that piece and the open houses and the community engagement process like that's happening. So some type of connection there. I think this is all kind of important when we're, again, talking about the future of transit riders and TriMet riders and who are the, the quote unquote customers that we're trying to serve after the pandemic. So, I think that's like a second question that I have. And then the third, I as a board member, want to think about the long-term phasing in strategy of a fareless subsidized system. Thank you, staff, for giving us some examples of some programs that have taken other way in other states. But I do not want that to be completely written off the table. So that's just one board member that would like some additional research that we can do. I referenced the some type of fearless system initiative task force. It sounds very fancy. It sounds very formal. I don't know if we can start that up with TIAC or some of our other, I don't know, just throwing out there some ideas of groups where, again, we know that there is a lot of community interest, a lot of community engagement outside of this building for Fairless. So those are the three sort of directions that I have.
Thank you. Director Bauman? I know that some of the financial projections for the agency that we've seen recently have assumed a fare increase. And so I think this fits into Director Way's observation, kind of what are we projecting financially off into the future when you get to 7-8 years down the line. I know it's much harder to project, but we'd like to understand. I think I agree we should understand how a fare increase plays into the budget in the foreseeable future. I would be interested to hear more about what Director Edwards has in mind for the board to provide as guidance to the staff. But I.
All right, so let me make this clear to you as I just figured it out. 25-cent increase in fare equals $2 million in a budget of 200 million out of 200 million, which is we're saying I'm predicting if all the ridership comes back and they get their 200 million. So they're going to get 2 million more, and over a lousy nothing 2 million, they're making this whole giant doomsday baloney. And we know you're lying, you're liars, you're paid liars, or you're volunteer liars in your case. You're full of shit, and I know it, and so do others.
I do tend to agree that hearing a proposal around the three pieces for increasing fare revenue, and that's increasing ridership, improving fare or reducing fare evasion, and then the amount of the fare. Addressing all three of those would, in my view, would be very helpful for the board to receive. So were you asking, Director Gonzalez? Or Director Edwards, were you going to speak next?
I think I know it. If I'm wrong, just let me know if I'm not me. But I think there are some nuances in all of those. And I think those nuances need to be shared with the staff prior to them taking a look at those issues that are going to be around the fare box issue, the ridership issue, the increase issue. All those need to be weighed, but at the same time, there are nuances that I think board members have brought forward today that need to be considered when they look at those, so they can come back with all the options that we brought about today, and then we can make a determination from there. Because if certain things are issues that we brought up today aren't considered in those areas that they're looking at, then we're going to be wanting to send them back and say, well, you need to consider this, you need to consider that. I don't want to go through that. I don't think that's fair to staff. I don't think it's fair to the public as well.
Thank you, Director Edwards. Director Gonzalez?
Thank you. On the heels of Director Edwards' comments, I wanted to lean into also just trying to provide clarity because I know from a practical standpoint, we're looking at a quick turnaround time here if any of this is going to get brought into the budget. So from my perspective, I think that, this is a large issue. There's a lot of pieces to consider. And I want to reiterate what I consider to be a fantastic next step. I think we can address this incrementally. So long as we are looking at how any recommended change is affecting or potentially affecting fare box recovery. And so long as any of these suggestions are improving fare box or likely to improve fare box recoveries, I could see us moving in the right direction. So, whether we're starting with a particular line or a particular community organization that we've decided we'll partner with, and they're going to raise money to help provide fares for their constituents, and that we've positioned that. We're already very close to doing some of those things. We already push passes out. We have yet to actually get any of those entities, those partners, to start actually adding to the pot for what we're actually converting into rides. So I would suggest making sure to look at the three parts of fare box recovery, and I would suggest to bring something forward that could make an incremental improvement. Because I know between now and November, to come up with a comprehensive strategy for free fares that isn't going to get kicked back with comments is a bit of a lot to ask for. So I want to be practical, and I recognize you have amazing talents and your experience, I'm sure, can come up with incremental steps that get this addressed. For some people, for some part of our population, perhaps. And I think all of that is improvement.
Director Lewis, do you have any further comments? Yes.
What Director Gonzalez said, those three areas that are very important, and I also really appreciate Director Edwards pointing out that the back and forth, we can be at this until April, and so I hope as a governing body as a board, we can come together, sit down, and really work with you, our president, to bring our thoughts, concerns, and so that we give staff a pathway to move forward, that they will use their time wisely and not waste their time. I mean, this is a huge process. It's not going to be solved, or we're not going to have a clear path by November. I mean, and we're coming up on the holidays and so forth. So I like both. In some way, we should be able to sit down and reconcile that.
Director Kim.
Thank you. In terms of next steps for me, the next time we gather together to discuss this topic, I'd like to see from staff and see and hear from staff the fact that they have reached out to local jurisdiction partners and the state legislature to communicate, one, our most recent snapshot of our financial realities, and two, the fact that we're on the verge of fare increase, our hands are tied, in other words, and three, we need strengthened financial partnerships from them and with them. And, I ask you, staff, to please leverage us as the governor-appointed board members to have that conversation with local jurisdictions and or state level. And this is because I want our current TriMet riders who are having to ride the TriMet system to get to and from where they need to be. I just want fare increase to be the very last thing that they face, and I want us to fully exhaust everything that we could have done. That is all. And to chime in about, I would also like to see a future task force on fareless system, more creative white paper done to see what other ways there could be, and
He's the only board member that's actually making reasonable proposals from my point of view. He's kind of standing up for the small guy, kind of.
And of course, I understand that there are multiple buckets of thoughts going on here, but that no matter how little of a resource we put into that potential, 2030, 2040 potential, this utopian idea of TriMet having a fareless system, I would like us to take that half a step forward, in the very recent future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. General Manager Dessou, do you have any closing remarks before I close the meeting?
Yeah, I do.
Let's hear Mr.
First, thank you for all of the information that I've heard from you, and really appreciate it. So as we look at next steps, I want to kind of recommend back to you my thoughts, but I wrote some points here is that I heard all of you. It seems like there's a holistic approach that we need to take to solve our fare revenue shortfalls. The approach looks at fare evasion, how we can improve our overall ridership, and then fares. And in that particular order is what I heard. I would propose to you that you take all of your thoughts, get them to President Simmons, and let's look at the November 9th meeting for you to give us direction at that meeting there. That way it gives you, the board, the opportunity to think about all your thoughts, and then come to the November 9th meeting to give us the information so that then we could begin to move forward on some of the outcomes that you've laid out today. So that's one proposal there. The other is that I can have staff regroup with the information that we've heard today and come back to you on the 9th with some type of plan. But again, there's been several things that's been brought forward. So that's why I wanted to come back on the 9th to make sure that we're able to narrow down the list on the research and efforts that staff needs to do on that.
The question I have for you is the timing is short. If we're going to impact the agency's resource stream in the next budget cycle, we would need to actually have a proposal from staff that addressed all three aspects at a November 9th meeting. And then because of the time for community input and the Title VI assessment, the board does not take any action.
Excuse me, I'm eating again. I've had enough of this. I don't want to watch any more of this. I'm done with it. This was bullshit. They're manufacturing a problem which doesn't exist. Okay, raising the fares makes no difference to the TriMet budget at all. And the fact that they're trying to make it sound like it does is a bold-faced lie. And that's that, man. That's all I have to say about it.